What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Zeus, and I'm back with another video. If this is your first time at the channel, just know I greatly appreciate you for stopping by. Go ahead and hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. We are taking the humble route, guys. Today, we are looking at the current updates on the U.S. China trade war. As you guys know, I am Nigerian, but I'm also an American, and I want the U.S. to thrive. But there's enough space for both China and the United States to succeed without, tearing each side apart. And, things are obviously heating up with these, high tariffs. Now there's a lot of shipment bans and things going on, and a lot of economic moves that could, essentially hit everyday Americans hard. So I just want to try to update you guys to the best of my ability. So let's try to break it down objectively, look at the facts, and talk about what it means for us as Americans, especially small business owners and farmers. So, as you guys know, the trade war is obviously in full swing, and the numbers are extremely high. The current administration, the Trump administration, has slapped tariffs of up to 245% on Chinese goods, combining 125% reciprocal tariff and a 20% tariff tied to the fentanyl crisis, and existing Section 301 tariffs up to 100%. So obviously this is a massive escalation from the 54% tariffs that were announced earlier this month. And why is this? The White House says it's in a response to China's retaliatory actions, like suspending exports of critical rare earth minerals and halting Boeing jet orders. So that's a lot to take in, right? I believe China was set to buy about 200 planes from Boeing, and Boeing, the people who make our airplanes, they contribute significantly to the American economy. So having a serious buyer like China not purchasing these planes from Boeing, it could, affect us really negatively. And obviously China's not, standing around just willy-nilly, right? You guys have seen in my last videos, I've talked about, China, or should I say Chinese manufacturers exposing, the luxury industry, and how a lot of people were dumbfounded, and now, they're trying to appeal directly to American consumers instead of going to Louis Vuitton, Prada, Versace, Gucci, whatever. Why not just buy it directly from the Chinese manufacturers? Essentially the same materials, except, the Chinese workers do about 95% of the heavy lifting and then send it to these respective countries. And they add the little special hardware, all the finite tags and different things like that, And then also China is also, hit back with 125% tariffs on U.S. imports coming into China, which was originally 34% earlier this month, as well as imposing export controls on 7 rare earth minerals like samarium, gadolinium, and terbium. And these are all minerals that are extremely important for our tech, our defense, and, our electric vehicles. So that's why you guys saw me in my last video when I was talking about, how Elon has had such an issue with, China not exporting these rare earth minerals because they directly affect Tesla. And Elon's getting hit from all sorts of sides because the trade war is affecting Tesla sales. The non-exporting of rare minerals is affecting, the creation of these batteries for EVs, for Teslas. So he's found himself in a conundrum, right? And also, again, going back to Boeing, right? Banning the purchases of, I think China has banned new Boeing jet deliveries, right? Like I said, I think 200 something airplanes that they were looking to buy, as well as restricting 30 U.S. companies in China, mostly in defense, from doing business in China. And the new twist is that Hong Kong's postal service has halted U.S.-bound shipments, because of, President Trump's quote-unquote unreasonable tariffs. So if you shop at like places like Temu, Shine, all those different types of places, you got to place your orders in right now before they just like stop shipping stuff out to the United States, right? So this is going to especially hit, a lot of small package deliveries and a lot of people, again, like Temu and Shine, who are specifically in the e-commerce space. They're going to get hit hard, right? Both sides are really digging at each other. And obviously, it's clear that it's not just necessarily about trade deficits. President Trump has claimed about 1 trillion. This isn't just about trade deficits, right? It's a strategic battle over resources, technology, and global influence, right? But is this tit for tat approach solving anything, or is this just hurting both economies, right? Now let's talk about, again, how this affects us as Americans, especially small business owners and farmers. China has been a top supplier of goods to the United States, providing 16% of our imports. Think smartphones, computers, and clothing. Not too long ago, there was an exemption that we thought was an exemption with the tariffs, saying that stuff like these different types of things would be exempted from tariffs. And then President Trump came back and said, no, nothing's exempt and different things like that. So nobody really knows, right? Now, with tariffs at 245%, prices for these same things could skyrocket, squeezing small businesses that rely on affordable Chinese imports to be able to stock shelves or manufacture these products, right? So a lot of companies are already stopping shipments, right? Because they're just unable to absorb these type of costs. Because if they don't go to the company, they're going to go straight to the consumer. So think about hardware stores and toy makers, even people who make America Great Again merch. Think about those types of people. Most of these types of people, they're literally scrambling right now because a lot of their supply chains are rooted in China, right? So they're not only just worried about the U.S. tariffs, but also China's export controls on the rare earth minerals, like I said before. These minerals are critical for electronics and electronic vehicles. And U.S. companies like GE Healthcare have seen stock drops due to the fear of shortages. Now, small manufacturers could face delays or higher costs, passing them on to consumers or just, shutting down. Now, also, a lot of people don't talk about it enough, but farmers are getting hit in the crosshairs too. Because China is suspending imports of U.S. like poultry, different, agricultural means, and their 125% tariffs make soybeans and corn exports uncompetitive. So American farmers who rely heavily on China's market and these restrictions could literally devastate their livelihoods, especially in rural communities. So both sides are hurting their own people. U.S. consumers face higher prices while China's slowing economy, can struggle to hit a 5% growth target. As an American, I want our businesses and farmers to succeed, but this feels like a lose-lose situation now. Punishing and pushing tariffs might sound tough, but they're raising costs for us at home. There has to be, a smarter way to compete without tanking our own economy. And with all these things going on, right? There's still some glimmer of hope, because no matter who's in office, you want your leader to do what's best for you as a citizen, right? No matter what country you're in. China has now appointed a new point person. Their name is like Li Chenggang, and they're essentially the new trade negotiator, which is signaling, a potential shift towards dialogue. If you guys haven't seen it, the press secretary Karen Levitt has been saying, China needs to come to the table. China needs to come to the table. President Trump wants them at the table. They need to strike a deal with us. But remember, Zelensky was at the Oval Office not too long ago, and he was ambushed, by President Trump and Vice President JD Vance, saying things like, "Oh, are you not thankful? You don't have the cars," different things like that. And I've said it before. China does not want to be in that same situation where they're getting like Xi Jinping is getting ambushed by us. He doesn't want that image to be shown to the Chinese people. So what they're doing is they're now appointing somebody who could lead these negotiation efforts, right? Because they have made it clear they don't want to negotiate directly with President Trump because, again, they don't want to see that type of situation happen. So now China is urging the United States to appoint a point person like they have with the president's full support in order to, figure out a deal. And China's demands are pretty specific. Show respect, stop blackmailing with extreme tariffs, and, address real concerns like the U.S. sanctions on technology and the sensitive Taiwan China issue, right? They want consistent U.S. policies and a negotiator who can speak authoritatively, right? Beijing's foreign ministry has called U.S. tactics bullying, essentially, while Trump insists that, the ball is still in China's court. Now, where I have to get critical, I think both sides I think they're doing too much, right? President Trump is, demanding that China come to the table. It looks like it goes against, China's whole ideology and insistence on, equality and mutual benefit. It's like two heavyweight boxers refusing to, bow out or anything like that. The U.S. needs to send a qualified negotiator, someone who's able to understand China's culture and language, and who's not just a political appointee by President Trump. At the same time, China's playing hardball because they're leveraging their rare earth dominance and refusing to budge unless the U.S. shows respect. Both could benefit from a deal. China really needs our United States market, and us as Americans, we really need Chinese goods. We don't have the infrastructure to bring manufacturing back to America like everybody thinks that we do or we can. Because again, I'm going to keep hitting this on the head. 80% of people want manufacturing jobs to come back to the United States. But out of that 80%, 20% wouldn't even exchange their cozy desk job in order to go work at a coal factory or a manufacturing plant to make all these goods. Right? So it sounds good until it's here. Until they have, our kids who are like juniors and sophomores in high schools doing that work. Would you still be happy with it then? Ego and politics, they play a real big part in why progress gets slowed up. But where do we go from here? I want the U.S. to lead and prosper like I know we can, but I also hope and pray that China can also thrive without this type of economic warfare that we got going on. The 245% tariffs, shipping bans that's going on, and the restrictions on rare earth minerals, they are going to hit small business and farmers hard, and U.S. consumers hard in general. And both nations are risking a global recession if we're not already in one. It's time for everybody to cool down, cool out. Maybe find these point people, get them in a room, and figure out where we can come to a consensus, because we need to find a legitimate path forward. But let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts below. Send this video to somebody who might see some value in it, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notifications if you want me to keep breaking down these videos or break down these topics that are going on in the world and how they affect us and our dollar. And never ever forget, it's you and I verse. Information, application, execution. Till next time. Peace.